and the floating ice on the other side of the ice bridge acted as a cork for the movement of a glacier that covers about a third of Antarctica.
Huh. 1/3.
Exactly, yeah.
That's a pretty good chunk.
It's a very good chunk. The estimate is from the European equivalent of NOAA that should that ice all end up in the water, we would see a 16-meter water level rise. Now, it takes some time for that to propagate around the planet, but we're not really sure how much. We only have speculation to go on as to how long. Some people estimate it might take 50 years for the effects of an ice shift in Antarctica into the water to show up in the North Pole, for instance.
What is the geology underneath this ice mass like?
Well, it's split into two areas. The one side of it, the ice mass is actually large enough to be pressing down on the land, and the land is under the water level. If the ice wasn't there and the land didn't pop up, it would be covered by about 100 feet of water. So in that sense, that section of the glacier, should it become detached from that rock, would naturally want to float, and is not floating now.
Huh. All right.
On the other side, there's a giant hollow, so to speak, sort of like it's basically a giant ice lip that extends out over a sharp precipice of rock, and the tidal action is able to come on in and get at the underside of the ice lip.
Is this do we draw any parallels between this Antarctic ice dynamic and what's sitting on the Canary Islands, western, I guess would be the eastern edge,
to a certain extent, yeah, you could. There we have vertical fracturing and essentially loose volcanic rock.
I mean, if that thing goes, and apparently it could go, I mean, you think about terrorism, it is suggested by Tim Refat that one guy with a suitcase nuke, a small one, could just climb up there, and there's a big fracture there, and just toss it in, and stand back and watch the east coast of the United States get one hell of a car wash.
Yeah. And in this case, though, the distance traveled would be through tsunami. Here we would not be looking at necessarily that kind of an effect on the ocean.
Yeah.
As the ice slides off, for instance, it might take 6, 8, 10 weeks to move. But even that is a lot faster than the 100 years that they're saying. And we have to bear in mind that Antarctica is a strange kind of a creature. You have people running around swearing and acting upon it that the ice has been there for millions of years.
Right.
And yet we have maps that are 1,800 to 3,000 years old showing the contours of Antarctica without the ice.
Yeah. Very clearly, by the way.
Underneath some of the ice that the forests there were taken down and used for lumber. They actually have stumps that were cut as opposed to being sheared off by kind of a natural process. This
is true. I have not seen this data for probably obvious reasons. Do you know where that data might be locatable?
For the trees.
Stumps of trees under the ice.
I'll see if I can find the link. It's been some time since I've read that.
That's fascinating, and that's the kind of thing that if there's any scientific substance that is actually being put out there, I mean, I want that story. That's fascinating.
I'll see about digging that up and getting it to you. But I also get stuff from people that send me, for instance, photos of areas they've been to in Antarctica. I won't go into the why they were there and the particular hike that they were involved in that show pass markers cut into the stone underneath the ice. And this is the same kind of structures for pass markers you see up and down the Sierras, for instance, that the Native Americans had left.
Well, I would submit that you're more than correct in postulating that there was no appreciable ice on that landmass, maybe even 4 or 5 centuries ago. I think you're right. You're talking about the Piri-Reis map, right?
Correct. Okay. That's only the most recent. There's actually been there's rumors that the Egyptians have one that predates that by several thousand years.
Wow. All right. Hang on. Be right back with Clif High in just a couple. Okay, back with Clif, and you're invited to visit halfpasthuman.com and subscribe easily the most fascinating, intriguing, unusual, and some would say bizarre study of human consciousness as reflected in the use of words and verbiage online that you'll ever find, and there are others studying this pattern of human expression to try to determine if there is a collective unconscious at work that might well forecast what we call the future. And in point of fact, that's exactly what's happening and exactly what these two gentlemen have been able to determine and establish and present to the world at large. That sum it up fairly well?
Sure does. Recently, that's also the case. I've noticed a number of organizations that are moving into this area.
Organizations such as?
Search engine IT departments are now starting to use emotional quantifiers on things.
Oh, really?
We're seeing it in corporations and this sort of deal. Of course, in the United States now, the corporatocracy rules, so this is not necessarily a good thing.
No, it's not. They'll just plug it into their massive plan of control and subjugation. And
yeah, I know. It's a terrible grade B movie plot. You know?
It is. It's the 1950s. Well, whatever. They made some fun movies back then.
Yeah.
At least you could laugh at them back then. Now, in sci-fi, you see things like that are real. They're almost documentaries.
I know.
Oh well. All right. So, we've got, let me see if this is up. Did James get this posted yet? I'm going to do a quick reload on the home page here. You got a little video action up on YouTube. Don't do that now?
A strange little handheld camera, run against our new little software endeavor, which is, spinning crop circles. Turns out these little crop circles may have more embedded in them than we'd given them credit for.
Okay. All right. First of all, crop circles have been a phenomenon since it came to prominence in the late 80s, early 90s, pretty much. And by 94, 95, they were quite a phenomenon and have continued to pace ever since. So,
well, we actually find recorded history that they go back to the 800s.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
But I mean,
but recently they've really taken off, and they've also seemed to scale up in complexity.
Yeah, it's been fascinating to watch that aspect of it. Of course, the hoaxers would say, "Well, it's just us getting better." I don't think so. There's more to it than that. Other people try to dismiss them by saying it's kind of an Operation Bluebeam cousin, and they're doing this from some satellite with microwave energies.
Well, they're pretty good if they are.
They're damn good.
Yeah. And and you know, it gets into some really interesting areas. But if we just leave it aside, if we just say, okay, we don't know what causes them, it's kind of interesting to think about all the effort and energy going into putting these giant, pretty pictures on the planet. It also makes sense that if we were to postulate that, well, maybe it wasn't humans, maybe it was beamed here from, some other planet, that it might not be just a pretty picture. Maybe they're presenting us with other information buried in it in one form or another.
Sure.
Some of them have remarkable effects when they're spun at the right speed for your particular eyes and your mind.
Okay, now I haven't seen this video. If you refresh Rense.com, look in the guests, look under Clif's name, you'll see crop circle swirlies vid. That's the video. And so go ahead and load that page up. But before we jump into that, it is very interesting to note, just to kind of underscore and backdrop what Clif is saying and where he's going with this, I think, because I haven't seen the video. But there were people who were actually putting up pictures of crop circles years ago, claiming that the shape had an impact on their living space, on their mood, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So, and the idea of spinning these seems to be rattling around in my memory somewhere. I'm not sure.
They had the Milk Hill one, Kent Stedman's site.
That's right.
And that was back in 2000,
goes back
4, 5, 1, somewhere in there.
The late Kent Stedman, remarkable fellow.
Right, and they were limited. I don't know why. I mean, I saw it back then. Say it was 2004 or 2001. It doesn't matter. And I never made the connection. But it was limited in its speed of rotation. And what I've discovered here is that if you alter the speed, you get radically different effects. And different people seeing things at different speeds get different effects.
Okay, so this is Clif's baby all the way. All right, I got it. Okay, this may be a whole new thing. In fact,
or it could turn us all into zombies. We just don't know yet.
Aha!
Playing there's always a zombie factor when messing with stuff like this.
Clif, the unwitting ambassador of the final takedown.
There we go. Yeah.
I see.
Make a hell of a movie. Yeah.
It would. All right. Crop circle swirlies. Load the page. 5-star rating on 25 views. Well, we're going to bump up your 25 views a hell of a lot more than that. So,
yeah, I had to sort of crank things out here today to get this in online. This is done with a piece of software. It's written in C++. Some interesting technical ramifications we needn't go into there. This runs it up to about, I think, 16 or 17 megabytes in size, JPEG, but we're using a library of third-party graphics support. And so it's 9 or 10 megabytes of DLLs, and I'm not really sure we've even got the dependencies right yet. So we don't have anything where we can just distribute the software. But we've got a number of those crop circles where I finally sort of tweaked the image correct to get it to swirl appropriately. And even some of the irregular ones that are asymmetric have phenomenal visual impact.
All right, well, let's look at the first
my
one.
supposition is that I don't care who made them. Whoever did make them is very much aware of the optical characteristics of the human body, especially persistence of human vision, and how all that works, and intended for some of these to be spun at various different rates. Some of them even appear to have multiple axes of spin designed into them, now, which we can't do yet, but over the summer maybe I can get that working.
That's wild.
It's a strange concept, but yes, they actually... And there appear to be reference points if you actually decide to look at them from the perspective of, okay, this is something that is intended to be spun, and somewhere encoded in here there may be some further instructions. Some of these more complex crop circles appear to have multiple centers upon which you can get a visual effect, and they seem to have reference points that point to these alternate, non-obvious centers.
Wow,
and we've only messed with maybe 8 or 10 of them.
That's it?
So who knows what the plethora of crop circles that are out there have to offer us.
Okay, well, this first one, did you know, I immediately, this looks like 2, 4, 6 rockets, old-style rockets, ready to blast
Shooting
off,
yeah.
all pointed toward the center. Some of